So welcome everybody to this amazing time, this Imbolc, the start of the Chinese New Year, the Wood Dragon, and the beginning of February, which is a massive month for different things happening to us all. So this is episode 279, springing into the new year of the Wood Dragon. Welcome everybody to Heartspeak. So what is today about? Well, it's about a lot of things, and Imbolc itself is a fascinating time. The word itself means in the belly, and we're going to talk about what that means. In simple terms, it means the beginning of spring, the birth of often babies, lambs, etc., that have been held in the belly of the mother until this time. So it's often seen as the beginning of springtime, which of course may or may not tie into where you're living if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. But we're talking about a Celtic tradition. And I've studied this Celtic tradition that goes back 4,000 years, way beyond, if I may, the Christianized version of this. And it was welcomed so much to see in the sun and bringing the sun back into this Northern Hemisphere. And the interesting part of this was that these people are often seen as sun worshippers. There was nothing about sun worship. It was understanding the makeup of the sun. What is this fiery energy that comes from the sun? And do we originate from that place? So the goddess who was related to this is, we might call her Brigit or Bridge, and she is the goddess who was the daughter of the Tuatha god Dagda. Now Dagda was seen as very powerful because he had a cauldron that never ran out of food or fire, etc. He had this amazing cauldron of eternal abundance. And he also had a golden oaken harp that he played. And what we understand about Bridge, I'm going to call her that, try and get the word right. I know I may not be pronouncing that right for those of you who are Irish, but I'm trying to just say that her powers came from her father. And her name means the fiery arrow of power. And her qualities were virtue, power, vigor, abundance, creativity, compassion. And all of these powers were available to her. And I think on a day like this, they're waiting for us as well. They're saying, this is an important day. So rather than just, even though we often talk about her being associated with healing and bringing food to people, and even in many Celtic traditions, it's about making sure that she protects you from evil. You can hear that's got very much overlays of a more religious makeup that's only 2,000 years old. So one of the things that she had the power over, that not just power over, maybe power with, were the forces of nature. And you may have heard my podcast a few sessions ago when I talked about the netters. And the netters were related to the Egyptian culture. And the netters were those who had learnt to harmonize and then master the forces of nature. And when I read about her, I thought, this is exactly the same thing. What Bridge is trying to help us to do is actually become this amazing creative being with almost a wand of power to be able to create anything, but to be able to create outside the normal setup that we're living in at the moment. So this is a time of empowerment, but not just power within, it's power to work in the mystical worlds that many of us may feel, well, that's outside me. But this is a time, especially when we have this wood dragon as well, to work with these creative energies. Hope that's making sense to you. And the magic of her power, even going into the time of Christianity, was that you would have 19 priestesses who would guard the fire, the eternal fire of Brigit, that it was so important that the fire must never go out. And of course, you think about it, what is this fire? To me, the fire is the fire of your spirit, the fire of your heart, the fire of creativity. And what they call a cross day, a cross quarter day, is in the Celtic tradition. It's the time where we engage with this fire and we bring into life, into our lives, what it is that we have been storing in our bellies for during the winter time, or even during the summertime if you're living in the southern hemisphere. This is a time to saying, what wants to give birth? What is it that I have been talking about doing for a long time? What is it I've been thinking about doing, but I've not had the courage to do? Now, a lot of different energies are relating to this. As I say, the wood dragon that I'm going to talk about, but also, as I always keep saying, Pluto moving into Aquarius. You may have noticed that something's stirring in your belly, something's stirring in your energy field that's saying, you know, I'm ready to do that now. Or what I've been doing is great up to now, but I'm going to do more. And as I've mentioned before, it may be you've been doing a fabulous job in whatever you've been doing. And now the universe is saying, okay, let's move to the next level. And so it may be letting go of what you thought you were here to do. And that's the important part of this, is she's saying, yes, this is true to you. This is a creative time, and now time to move. Now, it's very interesting when I look at these cross-quarter days that she actually has these cross-quarter days move between the solstice and the equinox. So again, if you heard me speak about the solstice, the word solstice means sun stands still. So here you are, the sun standing still, whether again, we could call it the December equinox, solstice, the sun standing still is really just saying, okay, I am in that point of singularity. I am in that nodal point, that point where there is nothing and everything. So if you go back to that December 21st, 22nd, you were in this place where you said, I am empty. I am empty of everything I came here to do. And now, in this cross day of February the 1st, we're saying, okay, what seeds were planted? What's coming out now because of what I experienced at that December date? Can everybody just make sure they're muted, just to make sure? So when we're in these times, we're really being given the chance with this magical wand that she's got in her hand to say, I'm ready. I'm making that move. And I'm just going to move from her to the dragon, the wood dragon, because the wood dragon is also telling us something similar. Know that even though the dragon is just one of the 12 astrological signs in the Chinese astrology, in many cultures, it is seen as this creative power. I've talked about it, the dragon energy, the serpent energy. In some cultures, they don't see the new year as being the dragon. They see it as the nagas, the serpents. So this sort of dragon serpent energy that's coming into our world for this year is telling us the same thing. This is a moment of birth. This is a moment to be inspired. This is a moment to do things you've never done before. And that's what I would be really focusing on if I were you. It's like, what is merging from within me? The interesting thing, if you don't know, there are 5 elements in the Chinese astrology or traditional Chinese medicine as well. And the elements start off with water, and then wood, and then fire, and then earth, and then metal. So water, if you want to see it like that, is this unlimited source of consciousness. Again, I kind of trying to give you the idea that we're not sitting in the water, we're not sitting in this moment of wondering what to do. we've gone beyond that. We're now in the wood stage that says, what am I going to grow? And wood is often related to trees and plants. What am I growing out of the water? What is emerging out of that water? And what I love about that is that wood, if you don't know, connects to the liver and gallbladder. So you can get a little frustrated, perhaps, at this time with not doing what you came here to do. So if you're feeling frustrated, this is a really good time to go, okay, something needs to change. So wood tends to be related to movement. And when we don't move, we get frustrated, irritated, stagnant. So everything about this wood is what needs to move. And what I like to say is that if I'm feeling frustrated, I have to ask myself, do I need to move away from this situation, or do I have to move my attitude? But it means something has to move. And so where do you feel unable to move? Where do you feel restricted by maybe, someone else's plans or, you're following a route that you thought you were here for? This is a really good question to ask at this time, particularly this week. Where am I feeling frustrated? Where am I feeling that I'm not growing? Again, wood is about growth, as is, the whole Imbolc. It's very much what's emerging. What am I birthing? And so if there's nothing being birthed, this is probably something to be looked at, especially if you feel, excuse me, just make sure you're nice and muted. No. There we go. So this idea of being able to sit in this time is really important. Now, one of the next things I'm going to say about the wood dragon, it's seen as tremendously creative and abundant.
Yes, I had
fighting.
Hillary came round.
But at the same time, it's really a time for reminding yourself of what is the seed of your being? What is it you came here to do? And again, I'm using those words. And the symbol for, this time in Imbolc, and I'm not sure if you can see it on here, is let me see if I can get it. There we are. This is the Brigit cross. So this cross is, some of you may have it, in your home already. And I certainly have a necklace of it. I've got a few necklaces of this. But this symbol is very unique. It's not an equilateral cross. Let me try and see, make sure I've got it over. Ooh, there we are. It is a cross that has this square in the middle and then has 4 different lines coming out of it, but all of them are swirling. It's not what we call an equilateral cross. They're swirling, they're moving. And the way in which you create this cross is fascinating. Apart from you get 12 pieces of rafter or pieces of old, people are doing it with straws, with plastic, with paper. You can do it with all sorts of things. But the idea is that you cross one strand over the next at a 90-degree angle. So you take these 12 strands and you turn everything 90 degrees and then you bring them together. You can look it up on YouTube. The key to this is that that's what they were considering the movement of the sun. So the sun moving from the east to the west, they're saying the movement that they make when they make this cross is actually symbolizing the movement of the sun. And the sun in the northern hemisphere returning to the earth. So it is a sort of awakening, but it's also coming to us all to say, what is that sun that is turning inside me? So I come back to my thoughts on this, is that if we believe that in the beginning, we start at maybe the heart of the earth, the heart of Mother Earth, the heart of the sun, the heart of the Great Mother, the galaxy, we begin as nothing. We begin in that place. The first thing that happens to our light is it then attracts around it the 4 elements. And the 4 elements represent that square I was showing you. So it's basically saying that as my light emerges into this world, I take into myself the mastery of these 4 different forces of nature, and I then become what I'm to become. At the same time, what we're doing is acknowledging that we never leave. Our light is only expressing itself in the world. 90% of us stays outside this 3D, in the 5th dimension, etc., as our higher self. So it's really saying it's not about emerging, how can I say, losing yourself. It's about expressing yourself in order to make your light brighter. So I'm bringing in all those thoughts. This is really, if you don't know what you're here for, don't try and build something, break everything down to come back to that point of singularity. This isn't about building on something you've already done. Sometimes we have to drop into a hole, as I say, to become whole. Sometimes we have to undo things to come whole. And one of the things I'm noticing is that events are happening in my life that trigger an old memory. And those old memories go back, certainly many decades in this life, maybe, and certainly can go into other lives. But I'm recognizing that at this time, I'm being reminded of events that I may need to return to myself, the wisdom that came from that event, or to remind myself of how courageous I was in that event, or what happened. And you may also have experienced that things are happening and you go, wow, that just reminds me of Baboom. And you're jumping back in time, almost to remind yourself, what is the fire? What was the creative fire that was burning in that event? And what do I need to bring into myself at this time? I'm just sharing that because that had happened to me quite a few times recently, of events that had really, were coming around again. It's like, not again, but here it is again for us to experience. And I'm wondering how many of you are having that. So when you get triggered, I'm just noticing and maybe saying to you is, don't say, oh, there it goes again. Say, wow, this is spiraling round to the same thought. And reminding yourself, what is it that I need to take from those past experiences that will make me stronger in this moment? That's what's important. So the last thing I want to say, and I want to be conscious of time so that I give plenty of time for questions. As you know, Pluto has moved out of Capricorn into Aquarius, and we'll go back into Capricorn for a short time in our autumn or fall, which is going to be very interesting because I think many countries are having elections this year. But the fact of the matter is that Capricorn is a doorway. It's a portal into into other dimensions. Aquarius is about seeing all the dimensions. Aquarius is about seeing the bigger picture. So when Pluto is sitting at the doorway and showing us all the different ways that we could go if we wanted to, and it's really saying to us, I've opened the door, you just have to transform yourself in order to see all these dimensions. So it isn't about, oh, I've got to rise up, 3rd dimension, 4th dimension, 5th dimension. What we have to do is free ourselves from the net we've been in, or the matrix we've been in, or whatever you want to call it, that's told us that we can't see these other worlds. And so what we're doing really at this time is undoing ourselves, untying ourselves. So we're saying, hang on, I don't need to do this or this and this to achieve oneness. I just have to remember I am already oneness. I already have that fire in me. I already have that connection to the galaxy, to the universe. I've just forgotten. So to me, the wand that Brigit is giving us is saying, you can use your wand as like Harry Potter to both dissolve something and to bring something into new life. So this is an amazing time for this change that's happening. And I perceive that because Aquarius is so much about this new message of unity through the acceptance of diversity, and Aquarius is so uninterested in polarity and emotional games, I see that I'm going to see revolutions of people, not necessarily coming out to be against something, but for something. We're moving into a time where we're saying, I will take responsibility for my energy, but I also recognize everybody else is part of this journey. And I feel that as we move towards April, and you've heard me speak about this Jupiter-Uranus meeting around the 20th of April, which is going to be, a huge time. But I think that what we're seeing in the farmers, in the financial markets, all of this connected to Taurus, we're seeing people come together from all walks of life saying, we need to understand that we are part of nature. We are nature beings, the true nature of humanity. We need to come back to the earth. We need to come back to what we know inside ourselves instinctively, common sense, and not be taken away into worlds that actually don't make sense to us anymore, or never have. So I see a movement of people and animals and everything else not coming against something, but rising up because we have a commonality within us all. So just to finish on this, I'm going to just give you a few beautiful dates because February is loaded with events. Oh my goodness. So the 4th of February, I read, was for the Chinese New Year, for the Chinese, New Year, a very important and auspicious date. The Chinese New Year is actually on the 9th of February, but for the Chinese, the 4th is important. If you are 60, and I haven't mentioned that, you are a wood dragon. So congratulations if you are a wood dragon, because the 5 different elements times the 12 different animals come together to create 60. For every 60 years, we have a wood dragon. And so the last wood dragon also was in 1964. And I look back to see what was going on in 1964. Well, it was the beginning of the Beatlemania, and it was the beginning of the power of love, but it was also about exploration, going to space. But I also, when I was reading this, there were quite a lot of revolutions going on. So I think that there's this, it's not about revolting against, it's revolting for. I think it's a time of bringing forward whole new creative energies. Now, on the 5th of February, Mercury and Pluto get together. So Mercury is moving into Aquarius. Pluto is just sitting there at 0. So Mercury and Pluto, we're going to hear, there's going to be a lot of voices raised. There's going to be a lot of things spoken about. Remembering Pluto is also about transformation. It's saying what needs to be said in order to bring about transformation, even if it causes a death. In other words, death leads to rebirth. So I think there's going to be a lot of words spoken. We could see problems with communication, power cuts or anything else where we're not able to communicate. But I think it's going to be a lot about listening to words that might upset some, but actually free others. We have the new moon, as I say, on February the 9th, where the sun and moon are in Aquarius. Again, this is the beginning of this wood dragon new year. Fabulous. On the 13th, Mars goes into Aquarius. Mars is about passion and Pluto. So this could be a really powerful time. It could be people demanding something to take place, something happening, unexpected happening. It could be people, crossing a line, and then people say, oh, you can't cross that line. I think we're going to see a lot of passion being raised. The 15th of February, Venus goes into Aquarius and also meets Pluto. Venus about love, but also about relationships. It's about our loving of ourselves and loving each other. I think we're going to see a lot there. And then I won't go any further than that at this time. But this, I would say, the next 15 days are dynamite. And I think they're both powerful for those of you who are ready to make the move. And for those who aren't, it's like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing here. So, allow it to unwind you, destructure you, go back to your center, because once you've taken on that magician's wand, there will be no stopping you. So I'm going to finish on that moment for the podcast and thank everybody for joining on the podcast.
Thanks for listening to the HeartSpeak podcast with Dr. Christine Page. Please check out all HeartSpeak episodes in the podcast archive section on www.christinepage.com. HeartSpeak is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Tumblr, and now playing on Amazon Music and iHeartRadio. You can also watch the Archive podcast on Christine's channel, on YouTube, and now on Rumble. Connect with Christine on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook group, The Great Mother Calling. Do share with family, friends, colleagues. Join us next time for another edition of Heartspeak.